All right, here we go. Please subscribe to the channel. Please.
Hey guys, YouTube's got an algorithm and it really help us out a lot if you could like, comment, and subscribe. This is how we can get more information out to more people and share the message of Toronto real estate.
In
Thanks.
that order. Like, comment, subscribe, and hit the damn bell.
Good.
I'm gonna have to go to the other side.
Beautiful.
This is cool, man.
Do you want me to move your name? It's not happening.
I gotta figure out like where I need to be. Here.
It's okay, because nobody's really watching. It doesn't matter. You are the only, forget about the latest, but you are the only late guest of all time. Welcome, Ben Gaum, to the show.
Welcome. Good thing we had the delayed or the daylight savings time today, right?
Oh yeah.
We gained an
I thought it
extra
would be an
hour.
hour and 26 minutes late, but
What is
we're
it?
doing pretty good.
Is it a?
Yeah, that's what saved me for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
glad we could save you. So let's give Ben a little introduction here. Ben Gaum from Projekt Studio Architects. Ben is a real architect. He has also been my friend since grade 1. No, not real architect. No. So he's perfect for the show. Ben is joining us in studio today.
Yep. We brought him in. We flew him in down to the studio just to make sure he's a special
Yeah.
guest.
This is nice. You guys did a good job here.
Yeah, we got a good deal on the space.
like it.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Office
joining us
tower
this
downtown.
morning.
No one wanted the space, so we subleased it.
You didn't even have to sublease. You just walked in. Nobody noticed.
No one was
You
there.
just moved into a space and nobody's been
Nobody
in here
cares.
for
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
downtown Toronto office space. Nobody knows we're even here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a ghost town in this building.
Got a cough at the front door, and everyone just clears the room and go into the
Exactly.
elevator. You're good.
So it's great. So I've known Ben since grade 1. Ben
Yeah.
Ben and I have been friends since then. We've been in a band together, and somehow we both kind of ended up in real estate. Ben took the architecture route, and I took the get a pounding every day route. But it's been nice to have somebody that I can actually talk real estate and construction with, forever, right? Who actually understood what the hell I was talking about. Most people only get like that kind of dinner talk version of real estate.
It's also being able to talk to someone that, and I'm the same on your side, right? It's like when you're talking with someone that you have that much of a personal connection with, that like nobody's trying to pull anybody or pull everything over anybody. It's just there's no bullshit. It's just that all the bullshit's out on the table, and yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's
I
cool.
agree.
So
Big table.
I thought Ben would be, big table. I thought Ben would be interesting to talk to because he's got a different perspective than we have. So similar to mine, like he's on the development side, doing. I guess do you specialize in mid-rise? You would say, or
Yeah. That most of the stuff we're doing and pushing is more mid-rise. I wouldn't even say low-rise, like mid-rise stuff. I mean, the high-rise stuff is we have a ton of experience in doing the high-rise stuff at other firms, but as Projekt Studio Architects, it's mid-rise stuff moving forward. So,
and
Is that a space that's grown over the last few years?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, even recently, just there's been it's been interesting for us to see sort of in the media and the news and everything. There's been such a push for the missing middle. Everybody's been sort of pushing that missing middle, line. But we've been seeing that for years. Just because, I mean, I sort of cut my teeth on the high rise development over the last 15 years, and you see that just expand and explode, and then eventually people started to catch on that there was an actual missing middle. There was a mid-rise sort of missing link in there that they've people have now started to address. So we're just finishing up construction on a 144 unit condo building out in Hamilton, that's a 4-story building, another 4-story 64 unit rental in Barrie. So you're seeing a lot more of that sort of stuff.
Is that mid-rise 4 stories?
4 stories, 100 and something units. Wow,
that's a big piece of property, right?
Well, it's huge. Yeah, it's a 4-story and it's 144 units.
Yeah,
so
it's spread out.
Yeah, it's really, really spread out. So, yeah, I mean, listen, I think that's a good question, actually, right? Like, I think, when you have, and there's a lot more projects like that, right? So technically, a 4-story building you wouldn't necessarily consider as a mid-rise building, but when you're talking about, over 100 units in a building like that, then it's more of a number.
You can't call that a low rise and say this is a small development. This is now
right. Yeah.
What do they build it out of? Is it built out of wood?
No. This one is a super interesting building. Actually, it's 100% precast. It's a total precast building.
Oh, you showed me this building.
That we did with Coroslav, and yeah, I mean, super crazy, super innovative and progressive, but like very challenging project to work on. Very challenging.
What's the benefits? Like, why would someone choose to go that way other than just like?
I mean, it's the same. People sort of have this. And I've seen it over my professional career and even in schools. You see this sort of cyclical nature of people pushing a prefab or prefabricated elements or precast concrete. So I mean, these notions actually aren't new at all, right? Like the prefabrication and stuff has been around for 100 years, right? Like if you walk through the city of Toronto, all the old Victorian homes that you see in the annex, those are actually homes that were, bought from a catalog that were shipped over in boxes and pieces that you just assembled and put together. So, right from the get-go, the idea was that you could get it sort of the IKEA model, right? Like if you're producing them in bulk in a controlled environment, you can get them for cheaper. And the main pro element is always, that you can build it so much quicker. But the reality is, when you come to 2021, and then, again, I'm just finishing up this project that was, if anything, it took like a little bit longer just because there's so much, people forget that there's so much more focus on the front end of those projects that, yeah, by the time we got to construction, it went up super quick. It went up really quick. I mean, we're talking it was the largest Lego set I've ever got to play with and put together.
But you have to plan every aspect of it before.
But I mean, not just plan. I mean, the level of detailing that every aspect. I mean, you can imagine, right? Like if you were, I imagine both of you guys when you were kids put together. I wouldn't even say Lego because Lego's
less
not even
precise.
Lego can be less precise. It's more like if you ever built like one of those car models or an airplane model, whatever, when you were a kid, and you get 3/4 of the way through and you're like, oh man, I glued that one piece backwards. That's totally screwed out. Like I can't get the wheels in now, right? So it's more akin to that. Whereas Lego, you can just sort of pop it off and move it back in. But this was more like, if you glued a piece in backwards, you're screwed, big time, right? So there's so much more time and energy and effort spent on the front end. So at the end of the day, not only did we not come out with this thing getting built quicker, it even took a little bit longer.
Probably cost more too, over budget.
Well, we're sort of waiting for those final numbers to come in. But I think cost-wise, they might have done okay. They might have actually sort of come in where they were expecting to come in, or maybe somewhere.
In theory, right? In theory, when people are putting these plans together, they're like, wow, we're going to save time on labor. We're going to save time on materials. We're going to have this project done, interest payments. Man, we're going to save $1 million. And then when it's all said and done, it's probably not the savings.
No, like every other project.
because
Well, and that's
every
it.
project manager is trying to save money, and that's one of the ways that they come up.
It's too new. They haven't
yeah.
figured it out yet, and they haven't like what's the word I'm looking for?
There's
Like
humans involved. We need more robots.
we need more robots, 100,000,000%. We need more robots, but we need everything to be, what's the word I'm thinking of? Like, everybody has to be using the same kind of module sizes, right? So that you can get economies of scale.
Not only
Standardized. Everything has to get standardized.
Yeah. And that's the tricky thing, is that like to standardize something. I mean, putting this building together made me appreciate even more how the hell a company like IKEA could actually come into fruition and actually become as popular and as, because it's all about that. It's all about, you know, the more technology we get, the harder it is to standardize, because the easier it is for everybody to just go off and do their own thing, because there's a million different programs and there's a million different methodologies and there's a million, you know, so to get everybody on board. So not really just in terms of the actual physical pieces, but this project was really tricky because, you know, we do everything in Revit, and Revit is, you know, an architectural drafting program, but you're not working in 2D lines. You're actually building the actual 3D model as you're going through. And, you know, so in theory, if everybody was using Revit, then I could have just taken the precast model, brought it into my model, taken the mechanical model, brought it into my model, and just been able to see any of the red flags and conflicts. But because everybody was on a different technology and software, it just wasn't, you know. So again, it's like these concepts of prefabrication and whole thing, like they've been around for 100 years, but like it's always the same problem. It's always the same problem of like we're not working in a totally homogeneous thing. Like where prefab could probably really work well is in Russia or China, and that's why when you go to China and you see
just
buildings,
blocks of buildings, seas of the same building.
Buildings that A, they all look exactly the same, and B, they were all built in, you know, like a 14-story building is built in 10 months, you know, and people are like I was
8
there,
of them.
I spent a lot of time in China, and I was there when they were building the Three Gorges Dam. And one of the studies that I went there to go assess was...
Were you the engineer that stamped it?
No, but we were there to sort of analyze the social
He oversaw the project.
We give you $50 to stamp this.
Yeah, exactly. No, but when you go around and you see, they're building a city to house the people that we had to relocate because of the dam. I mean, we're not just talking like a little village of whatever. We're talking a city of like 500,000 people or 1 million people, and it's being built in like 10 months. You know, like I walk out onto the streets, and it's like it was like a movie set. You know, it's like in 10 months they built this city. I mean, we're talking like roads, traffic lights, buildings, everything. But nobody was there yet. Nobody was there to occupy this place yet, right? So that's really, you know, the type. You know, that's who can sort of really take advantage of these types of, you know, methodologies for construction. I find that.
I've got a cool China story quickly, because I'm not the architectural expert here. So there's a temple, a Buddhist temple in Bethany, and years ago. So I was about 19, and I was getting my real estate license at the time, and I was helping a guy doing some like labor and stuff up there. So I kind of became familiar with the site, and I drove by last summer because it's all completed now. And they did, so we're going back 15 years ago when they started, and they built a temple that's 10,000+ square feet, all made out of wood with no nails or screws or glue. And they stood in China, and they came, and each piece just fits puzzle on top of this hill. No nails, screw, or glue.
Wow.
Yeah.
A while, but still, that's pretty impressive.
I wouldn't want to be on the second floor though.
No, it's nice.
I'm sure it's great, but I would stay on the ground floor.
Yeah, well.
But I mean, but they're able to do that because everybody's on the same page. Listen, for better or for worse, we know what that means if we're on the same page.
You better be on the same page.
Right, exactly. I mean, like, that's in a communist country, everybody's on the same page. So, but when you want to talk construction and methodology of construction, especially when you want to talk about prefabrication and all of those types of construction methodologies, like that's where I mean,
but now all they're doing, like when you take a typical point tower now, I mean, everybody's building the same building. It's just like now they're doing wavy, weird balconies. Like if you go to Young and Bloor, it's like it's all the same building. It's just different balconies. So why couldn't they standardize the construction of the point tower portion at the very least and throw that thing up quick?
Because you're not talking about standardizing the actual building method, right? You're talking about standardizing way deeper than that. Like we're talking, you know, when you're building a building at Young and Bloor, you're dealing with like unionized workers and this, and then this trade has got to deal with it. You know, you know what I mean? Like that's what has to get, or not has to, but that's what ends up being standardized in a controlled environment, where it's like everybody just comes in and is doing exactly what they're told to do.
If they brought people in from China, so this temple, they brought obviously everyone over here to do it, would you buy the condo at Young and Bloor where they said it was going to be made in China and assembled here? I mean, is that going to be the building that you're going to want to invest your money in? I think that the stigma in North America is that that building may not be up to code, right?
Yeah.
So it's a tough transition to make, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean that's all just sort of hypothetical.
They're getting there slowly, like with houses, you know, first with trusses, they started to engineer and mass produce them. And then they got into like floor systems, and now they're starting to do wall panels, and they're getting there. It's like
it's definitely getting there, right? But every time something's tried, you realize that, like, look, that building that we did up in Barrie, it wasn't totally dissimilar. Like we didn't just do regular stick frame construction. We actually did a prefabricated metal stud exterior panel, like exterior wall panel, right? So again, everything was prefabricated, and again, everything had to be done. There was so much time and effort done on the front end, because it's like, you know, if you screwed up a window placement, like in regular construction, you could just be like, oh, let's just move everything over by 3/8 of an inch or half an inch or an inch or whatever it is. But here, it's like you couldn't do it. It was this prefabricated panel that was everything was already done. And not only were the studs in, but everything was sandwiched in and whatever, so that when there was a problem that came up with one of the, you know, for the exterior condition, whether it was windows or penetrations or whatever, it caused massive nightmares on site, because it was like, okay, we can't just shift that over, right? Like everything's, you know.
So what was the biggest, most expensive, craziest mistake that you've ever been involved with? Like I remember one time you called me and you were heading, I want to say to Markham, to a big developer's project, and like the garage parking was off, like the ramp and the height. I don't remember what it was, but I remember you telling me it was like a gigantic concrete problem.
Yeah, well, you got a really good memory. I mean, I think it's the same one, but it was building up in Markham, and I won't say the architecture firm or the developer or whatever, but it was a building up in Markham. I mean, luckily this was just it was a decorative precast concrete element, and you know, someone had just sort of miscalculated, and it was a chunk of concrete that was collectively, I don't know, maybe 70 feet long as it sort of wrapped around the building.
How many?
It was like 70 feet long.
Okay.
70 or
precast.
It was different chunks. It was a decorative element that was 70 feet long.
I got it.
And it was in different chunks, whatever. But the whole thing was miscalculated. And I just happened to be, I was working, you know, construction administration on the job. So you go up and you get the call that, like, yeah, this piece is, you know, this is, you know, a $200,000 piece of concrete or whatever it was, and it's not going to fit. So who's going to fit that bill, right? So I went up there and learned, you know, every Italian swear word that is known to man, because I was just getting yelled and screamed at on site.
Why was it your fault?
It's not my fault personally, but when you show up and you're you're representing the architect, and then, the cranes there and everything's there to put this whole piece in place, and it's just not, and someone just completely miscalculated, the size of this thing and the placement of this thing. So yeah, I mean, it's my job to be the representation of the architect on site. So I'm the one who got yelled at, and yeah.
I can only imagine the kind of mistakes that get like buried or hidden or just have to be dealt with on some of these projects. Like when I look at just building one house, the amount of times, like if I was the guy in charge, people would just pull me over and go, "Hey, what do you think we should do about this?" And I'm like, "Well, why the hell is this even a thing right now? Like, this isn't on the plan. What? How is this whole thing built like this, right?"
Yeah.
And it's always just constantly figuring out, like, how do we deal with this human error, and how do we deal with this human error?
I mean, I've dealt with, like, actually, I think it might have even been the same. It might have even been the same development, actually. But when they started going, they miscalculated. It was a long floor plate. It was just a long double loaded floor plate, and they started measuring from one side, and right off the bat they misread a calculation by, let's call it 3 or 4 inches. Like, one guy measured it to the outside of a wall as opposed to the inside of the wall where you're supposed to measure. And then as he was going through, he was doing that same miscalculation by the time you got to the end of this, however long footplate it was. I mean, it was like they had chopped off an entire suite by the time they got to the end of that thing, because the calculations just added up wrong. So yeah, I mean, those are like major mistakes. The good thing about that is that they were just taping it down. They were just marking out where all these suites were. They didn't actually start to frame this thing. If they would have started framing it, it would have been like,
somebody was smart enough to go, hold on a sec, something doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Why is there a big, huge sliding glass door in my bathroom?
Yeah.
But something's wrong. Something. So.
Why are we putting a fridge in here?
Yeah, that happens all the time. Even on this last one in Hamilton, the problem in Hamilton was they started production on these concrete pieces, and I'm talking, like, when I say these, it's like if you go to Core Slab, they've got, like, I don't know, it's got to be 100 acres or 50 acres, and when you go to their operation, it's just like Lego pieces, just like massive chunks of concrete in different forms. There's columns and beams and connecting pieces, whatever, and so they just start producing these things. And then as they started producing them, I picked up a couple of major conflicts that, we had, like, we had a whole row of suites that all of the bathrooms were lined up directly underneath these massive meter deep beams. We're like, we need to get to those beams before they actually build them. We need to sleeve those beams before they build them, because once they build them, that's it. We're talking like tens of thousands of dollars per beam that would have to get just scrapped and replaced or whatever. So it was like this race for time to, like, get to those conflicts before they actually started casting the beams and casting these massive architectural structural components. So
is that 50 acres full of mistakes?
Probably. They're waiting for
it's like a graveyard.
Yeah,
a concrete graveyard.
So I mean, listen, there's always going to be mistakes and conflicts and whatever. So
common pieces that people order. Ben, how have things changed since COVID? What's new in your world over the last year?
What's new in our world? I gotta be honest, thank God and knock on wood, but, like, and I'm sure a lot of the guys that you talk to would say the same thing. Like, from day one, it's like the entire construction and architectural and building industry was like, COVID, what? Yeah, great. I'm too busy to even worry about COVID, right? So it just didn't seem like it slowed down at all. Everybody I know in the real estate industry, I mean, mostly in sort of Toronto and the single family residential stuff, they're like, this is the craziest year we've ever had. And then, so in terms of real estate, in terms of building, right? Because right from the get-go, I mean, my two sites were already well under construction when we started into COVID. So that was, you know, one of the saving graces that there were, you know, the regulation said if you already have a permit, go ahead. Where I did obviously see a major, massive change was on site itself, right? So going on site, and especially onto these large construction sites. I was on, you know, the Hamilton one, and I'll give a shout out to Starward Homes here because they were, I mean, phenomenal. They went above and beyond. I mean, you know, everything from just like pump stations with stuff at like every single floor, every single door, every single entry, security on site to make sure that people are probably, you know, getting properly temperature and checked before they come in. So they really, really respected the process, and it benefited them because it worked really smoothly, and workers could be comfortable and know that they were coming onto a site that was a safe site. I was, you know, obviously on some other job sites that were just total nightmares. You know, you show up and there's like 20 guys up on a roof. Not one of them has a mask. They're all sort of huddled together because we're going into, you know, fall and winter framing and the whole thing. And so I saw some super sketchy stuff, but you definitely saw the guys who took it seriously. It actually benefited them in the end. So yeah, but in terms of the work itself, like I didn't see like nothing slowed down. If anything, things ramped up. So
what about costs though? Like, right, like different things that people hadn't maybe locked in those prices yet, or they had to make changes. How is that affecting the projects?
Huge. I had one house project that, you know, this couple was actually living overseas. They were living in Sweden, and they bought the house here sight unseen. And we started, you know, I was, you know, the whole time for the year before COVID, you know, I was working on a design with them, going through, we came with the whole design. And then right before COVID, we were expecting to have our committee of adjustment date. That's sort of a long answer. The short answer is everything ended up getting pushed back. So the whole project got pushed back a good year. And we're just at the point now where we just finished committee of adjustment. We're going into pricing, and the pricing is like, you know, way above what they were originally prepared to pay, right? So, and
what percentage did you say? What percentage did you say?
I mean, at least 15-20% increase on prices, right? And then
lumber alone is like 100% more.
The problem is that I'm finding that a lot of that, at least half of that is legit, and the other half is sort of like, you know, because I know the price of lumber has gone up, right? But the price of lumber hasn't tripled, right? So, but why has
it's doubled?
It has, but not from the big suppliers, yeah.
Right. Well, and it's also, I'm finding that the guys, you know, the construction industry itself is sort of taking advantage of the fact that, you know, because it's like
there's not enough trades, there's no labor.
Well, they're busy, they're swamped, so they're gonna do the job that pays them the most. Yeah,
that's it, right? So they're super swamped, you know, and I'm especially seeing where you can really see it is when you come down to smaller jobs, you can see that jump up a lot quicker. So I'm actually pushing through. It's going to be launching hopefully this week. I'll keep you guys posted on that one. But I've got my own Projekt Studio Architects. I have my own laneway house initiative that, you know, because, and it derived from, like, you know, I was a major and still am a major advocate of laneway houses and the laneway house initiative that Toronto has pushed through. But when I started going around and asking all other architects and especially contractors, okay, well, how much is this going to cost? And they're telling me basically prices that were, you know, between $600 and $800 a square foot to build these things. And I'm like,
whoa.
Well, that's insane. That's ridiculous, right? So I've devised a laneway house initiative of my own that actually involves shipping containers as my form. So I mean that's the full circle, right? So this can take us right back to our idea of like prefabrication and how it can actually, in my case, the numbers that I'm getting back now are actually massively beneficial. Like I'm hopefully going to be able to come in at like half the price of what these other, you know, what these other laneway houses are getting built as just pure stick frame building, right? And the amount of time it's going to take is like at least half the time, right? So, but again, I understand that like this isn't a new notion. This is something that's been around for 100 years, but like, you know, shipping containers is actually a perfect example of like, here's something that could actually really work, right? It's not just sort of just a pie in the sky notion. Like, it's something that technically it should work. I should be able to get these shipping containers here and then have a construction crew come in and frame the inside, or just finish the inside, not frame really, just finish the inside, and it should work. So the numbers I'm coming back are really, really good and really promising. And yeah, we're super excited. So we're looking to launch something hopefully as early as next week, or a soft launch as early as next week. So
okay, yeah. So right now in the news, what we're hearing about is condo buyers are looking for more space. So we know that people are kind of fleeing the city, looking for more space. But this article in particular is talking about condo buyers. So have you seen like designs changing from a design perspective of the interior of suites or houses as a result of like work from home or the need for more space? Or are people...
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Like, I'm, the single family homes I'm designing right now, like that's almost, whereas a couple of years ago, even 2 or 3 years ago, I mean, I get all my clients to write down sort of 3 different tiers of wish lists. And the first wish list is your just basic. It's like, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, kitchen, so just your basic checklist. But now, even in that basic checklist, it's like home office is like right at the top. It's like, we need 4 bedrooms and a real home office. I don't want just sort of like, oh yeah, I can sort of just put a desk in the sitting room at the front of the house and sort of work from there. It's like, no. Serious home office consideration, like serious. I mean, it's like heavy duty stuff and real planning and designing around that. So in the single family, I'm seeing that.
For one person office or multi-people office in the house?
Yeah, no, definitely multiple, right? So the one that I'm...
Cubicles.
Well,
the one that, especially for this couple that was coming in from Sweden, right? So, I mean, we took over the whole 3rd floor. Like, we're occupying the attic space, and it's literally just for 2 completely separate offices that they're going to be working from, and that sort of thing. But I mean, that was so much their focus. I mean, they wanted to focus on that more than the bedrooms. The bedrooms were sort of just residuals. It's like, yeah, bedroom's a bedroom. Like, it's a place where we're going to go sleep. But like, the offices are very, very important. Like, that's how we are going to live, right? Like, that's just the new reality. So, so that's in the single family. The other thing that we're finding in the single family again is like, there's only so much room that people have in these homes, especially urban homes and urban conditions, right? So that's where another big push for the laneway house initiative has come from, right? Like, people saying, well, I don't necessarily need a laneway house to rent out, but like, to have that as a separate office space is that's becoming a huge thing, so especially because people love the idea. I'm like this. I can't work from home. I can't just roll out of bed and go and just go downstairs or go into an office and work. Like, I actually have to put pants on and leave my house. And even if it's like leave my house and just go across the yard to a building in my backyard is so key. And I get that, but other people are the same way. They need to sort of feel like they're in a separate space. So, I don't know.
That's a really good perspective, actually, to say that, because that's what I think a lot of people are dealing with right now. And going back to the office is mostly the only option people have. So if you had a garden suite, laneway house, whatever you want to call it, that would actually solve that whole work from home issue. You wouldn't have to move.
So
right? You wouldn't have to move and sell your house $100,000 in fees and taxes and all that stuff. You hire Ben, you build a garden suite or a laneway house. I know the garden suites they're working on right now still, but you get a new, like a separate structure on your property, and you work from there. So and you probably have a rental suite in it too.
So, but the real
you can have your office down on the ground floor, a rental suite up on top, and I mean, there's a million different combinations, right? So, and we're really seeing it in buildings, and whether it's what you want to call it, a mid-rise or high-rise or whatever it is, but it's all coming. It's not coming from the suites themselves. I mean, the suites themselves developers have already gotten so used to the fact that, like, let's just squeeze as much as we can. When I first started, you know, I'm working on high rise in my first architectural office that I worked at, you know, a typical 1 bedroom, 1+10 or whatever, we're talking like, it was like 700 square feet, 750 square feet.
That's
now
a 3-bedroom now.
It's like you can squeeze a 3-bedroom into 700 square feet. So developers aren't going there yet. Developers aren't saying, well, let's go back to, you know, the 1,000 square foot or the 1,200 square foot. They're not doing that. But what they are doing is they're saying, I mean, we put a gym in the amenities, or we put a library is a better example, right? So typically the party room always got used. The gym always got used. Stuff like the library and the meeting rooms and those things never really seem to get used. So those are turning into, like, I'd rather have like an office space, like an amenity space where you go in and there's sort of a whole bay of separate little offices or whatever, something that people can go down and work and use in that building, right? Yep. So yeah, so that's where we're seeing it develop, and that's a true thing, right? I mean, like in the past, we've put in wine rooms, we put in stuff that was sort of like, it was meant to just look cool, but we sort of knew that, like, no one's really ever going to use this. It's just sort of for show. But now we're getting into nitty gritty. Now it's like, wow.
Well, before you were mandated an amount of amenity space, and you were trying to make it as cheap as possible because you knew it wasn't really a selling feature. People were buying regardless. But now it's becoming a selling feature, and people have to put a little bit more creativity into it, right? A little bit more thought into it. But the real problem underlying all of this is that we have no supply. We are in a supply crisis. We're in a pricing bubble simultaneously. I guess one leads to the other. And okay, so what we're learning from you right now is that there is no level of standardization or efficiency at the moment that will help us out of this situation. We already know humans are idiots, so they're not going to be able to speed things up. So what is the answer to the shortage of supply when we're pushing the demand? Like, demand has no choice right now. It's got one way to go. I know TK says, you know, something can happen, and maybe it will, but no matter what happens after that, we're going to still be in a supply crisis, right?
For sure. 10-year time frame. We don't have enough houses.
So
places.
Well, listen, I think there you could sort of answer that with, you know, the holistic answer is that, like, there's a million different things that need to get done and that should get done, whatever. Where I think that, you know, and Toronto has just sort of proved it, right? So you have a problem. We've got a shortage of product, whether you want to call it. Well, in this case, it was sort of a rental product, right? So what did Toronto do? Toronto finally got off its ass and it said, we're going to push an initiative for a laneway house initiative right there. So right there, that shows you that, you know, and it's like what I was talking about before with China and Russia. It's like the more that you can get it back to non-construction, non-purely construction answers, right? It has to go further. It has to go to, like, policies and, you know, that level, right? So, you know, if you can get to the level where the powers that be are pushing the initiative and they're pushing pro-development and they're taking away a lot of the restrictions and a lot of the red tape and the whatever, it's still insane. It's still red tape, right? So, like, I'm still like you know, there's the Laneway House Initiative is a perfect example of, like, how they said, let's do this. We're going to push it forward, and now right off the bat, should help explode and help the rental market in Toronto. But then you still have things like,
how is that going to help adding 10 laneway houses into the mix?
No, I'm saying that if you want to take the example of just purely rental rental opportunities or rental markets in the city, that's a small example that shows that when the government gets involved and pushes pro-development initiatives, it's something that can happen. This is happening. It's happening quick. It's only going to happen faster.
But most of the people that have a laneway, they don't give a shit. They don't want to build a laneway space. Like
they can't afford to do it,
or whether they can or they can't. They don't need it. They don't want it. They don't give a fuck.
No,
like, what percentage of people are actually doing it?
I think massive amount of percent of people are doing it and have the, you know, there's so many people out there that have the potential. The problem is what TK just said, right? The problem is that, you know, all the architects and developers and contractors who wanted to jump on this thing right out of the gate, they're pricing these things at 600, 800 bucks a square foot. It's like someone's making a shitload of money and it doesn't need to, that's what's scaring everybody off, is that like I'm going to pay $500,000 for a 20 by 20 foot space in my backyard. Like, I'm not doing that, right? But if I could borrow $250,000 for the bank at 1.9% or 2% and rent that space out for $2,200 a month, I'll do that all day long, and I don't even have to have any cash, free cash to sort of throw down on that. That's just all money that I can borrow from the bank, knowing that like that's a good investment. Dropping $250,000 on a laneway house is a good investment.
But seriously, how many
house
people are going to do it though? Seriously,
I think and hope a lot of people are going to do it. Right?
What's a lot though? 1,000 a year?
I think.
How many houses qualify, Ben, in Toronto? Of all
I think they said that there. I don't remember the exact number. Like I can't remember if there's 2,000 laneways, or there's 2,000 sort of kilometers worth of laneway in the city of Toronto. I mean, the numbers are there. The numbers are huge, right? So
I think there's like a 1.3 million households in Toronto. So I'm sure the number laneway houses that qualify, it's like not more than 50,000.
Even if it's 250,000, it's the percentage of those that give a fuck.
That's what I
right?
mean. So
yeah. I mean, it will make a dent, but
I think 10,000 is a max. I think 10,000.
That's what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that if you taking laneway housing as an example of how, like, 5 years ago it didn't exist. 5 years ago, if I wanted to do a laneway house, it was a total pain in the ass. Not only did I have to go to committee of adjustment, but it was so not known. It was like, everybody at the city would be like, well, I don't even really know how to deal with this, and there's really no bylaws to address whatever. But what I'm saying is that the city got together, recognized that there's something to do here. They wrote an entirely new set of bylaws to address this, pushed it forward, and now it's there.
How long did that take?
What I'm saying is that on a small scale, that's proven that that's an initiative that works. Push it forward and see how it goes, right? So
guinea pig project.
More guidelines will help.
So what do you think? They're going to do it on a bigger scale now?
I mean, it's definitely worth looking at, and it's stuff they have been working at, right? Like, so over the last 10 years, it's like how many different variations and combinations of like development charges and this and that, and it's gone back and forth, and we've sort of eliminated the OMB, but then brought in TLAB and this and that. So it's like, there's a lot of sort of push and pull and working. But
so what's the ideal scenario for you to get more available stock quicker?
What's your solution, Ben?
What is the answer? People come here.
Create more supply out there.
Like
what do we do?
8 to 12 people come here for the answer every
At least
week.
8 to 12. Well, hold on. It's been 45 minutes, so there's about 5 or 6 now.
There's only about 3 left. So we all want to know, all 5 of us.
I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't know if I have the answer.
I don't know if Ben thinks along those lines. Like, Ben's in his pocket, he's not worried about the economy. He's not worried about the supply. He just wants to design spaces for people.
What do you mean, more supply, more buildings he's designing.
Yeah, he's a busy guy. I mean, if Daryl's learned anything over the last couple of years of me working with him, it's that I do think, and I am sort of passionate about the non-architectural elements, right? Like, I'm fascinated by the development, but not only the development, just sort of the overall process and how you can get hung up. Look, like the projects that I'm working on with Darryl, we're getting feedback from the city that's just like, really? Like, I thought we were done with all this stuff. It's just a lot of You know, it's a lot of stuff that should just be eliminated and should be just pushed through. And right, am I right, Darryl?
Yeah, I mean,
we know how Darryl feels
you
about
know,
this.
I feel
right?
like a permit application is like one of those ducks. I need something like,
Listen here, I'll give you,
like that you have to shoot at that goes back and forth, and it's like, try and get me here, try and get me here. I'm over here right now. Here I am. Got me.
Perfect example. It's not a solution or an answer. It's actually another furthering the question, right? So my firm, Projekt Studio Architects, we actually come from Humphreys Partners Canada, which is a massive architecture firm in the States, based in Dallas, Texas. They've got offices in 12 different cities all over the States, and they specialize in purpose-built rental and student housing. So they thought, you know, this is, I don't know, 7-8 years ago, they thought, wow, we've got to tap into the Canadian market. We're not in there yet. We've got to tap into it, you know, because you're looking and, you know, you look at Toronto, and Toronto is like the #1 building market in the world. We've got more towers and more cranes up than Chicago and Mexico City and Shanghai, like anywhere in the world. I don't know if that's still the case, but 7-8 years ago, that was for sure the case 7-8 years ago. Still. So they get into the Canadian market, and right off the bat, they're blown away at like, how long? How long is it going to take to get this? Just until the time I get through a shovel in the ground, it's going to take 4 years for me to get a shovel in the ground. Like in the States, it's like, oh, I need a building. Call up an architect. Okay, let's do the permits. Let's send it into the city. We'll do a little bit of this and that. But basically, in 1.5 to 2 years, you got a shovel in the ground in your building, and you go, right?
Does the architect get the same kind of a fee in the States as he does here in Canada?
I mean, even architects in Canada don't even get the same fee as they do from one job to the other, or one typology to the other, right? So I think it's sort of generally the same anywhere, where it's sort of all over the place. There's no regulation as to what that fee.
So like if a permit process in the States takes 6 months to a year, and here it takes 3 years, are you guys both getting paid the same amount of money, even though it takes 3 times as long here?
Yeah, and that's why Mark Humphreys is driving, you know, flying around in his private jet, and you know, I don't know if you could find any architects in Canada who are flying around in their own private jet, but you know, maybe that's the main reason why. It's because we take our fee, and our fee is sort of spread over 5 years, and his fee spread over 1.5 years, right? So, but basically, the end of that story is that after 5 years, they got so fed up with the process in Canada, but mostly in Toronto and in Ontario. They're just like, we're out of here. They packed up and they packed up shop and closed their shop and moved on, and that was it, right? So I mean, that's a true telltale. That's an actual, I lived that experience tale of, like, you know, how the process works here in Canada and in Ontario and in Toronto specifically, that it's just way too regulated just for regulation's sake. Like, you know, most of the times you'll go through these developments, like what I'm going through with Darryl, and you're sort of just shaking your head like, why do I have to send my plans in 4 different times to get 4 completely different answers, to run, to sort of circle through and go through 4 different hoops for what? Like, there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it. These are intelligent. None of it makes sense, right? And we're all intelligent people asking these questions, that, like, we know when something doesn't make sense. You know, we're not anarchists. We understand that, like, there has to be a process in place, and we have to go through certain measures. Okay, that's fine, but, like, you know, so I mean, that's in Canada. I think that's just an entire Ontario. I can speak to Ontario and Toronto because I've never done work in other provinces, but I mean, that's just always going to be the case. I think that's just always going to be the barrier to what you guys are asking, and how do we you know, increase the amount, increase the load. And
I think one day there was a boardroom meeting down at the city center downtown Toronto, and they were all like, you know what, I think a really great way to speed up the process for building permits, I think we should add something called a consultation meeting into the mix, and we should have a meeting before the meetings, just to iron out and add, you know, some certainty and clarity to this process. just to speed things up a little.
Yeah.
And I don't think that idea worked, but it was implemented. And it is a thing. A pre-meeting to the pre-meeting maybe is what we're missing. But it's crazy.
Listen, you and me, I mean, everybody is, but like we're living that right now, right? It's like we go to the pre-meeting, and again, I'm not an anarchist, right? But when someone tells me something that is just so completely off the wall and so like, what are you talking about? You know, and we sort of question that, and it's not even like that pre-consultation or the pre. It's not like it sped anything up or sped up a process or helped us along or filtered us through any quicker. It's like it's been dragging on and on and on, and every time we submit, we get a completely different answer from someone completely different. And then, you know, next time you go in for that next meeting, it's like, oh well, he's not even here anymore. He retired, so we're gonna review this thing all from the beginning. I mean, it's stuff that everybody can relate to and goes through every single time they're dealing with the city, whether you're working on a 40-story tower or a 2-story addition on the back of your house. It's if there's one thing that is, you know, homogenous and consistent the way that we would like it to be in China or Russia, it's the ineptitued of the city and the city process of how they run through things, right? It's just, you know, that every time you submit, I mean, I warn my clients every time. It's like, as soon as we submit anything, we submit a house plan into the city, whether it's for zoning or committee of adjustment, as soon as it goes into the city, it's like anything can happen. It's a total like mystery box.
The abyss, the Bermuda Triangle.
You take it.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's like, well, okay, so now we've submitted. So
now you carry it over to him and make it look like you're working for about 12 minutes, and then you carry it over to her and wave it around a little bit, and then go back to the front desk.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. And that's like, so I tell my clients, I'm like, listen, why do you think it is that every time you call someone up from the city, if I want to call up, if on my zoning review, if it says, oh, John Smith did this, great. So I call up John Smith from the city. Why do you think every single time it'll say a different name, you know, when they're calling back, or if I'm calling, it'll say, oh, I'm calling John Smith's phone, but it says Rory McGillicuddy. It's because, you know, it's like the turnover from department to department to this and that. They don't even have time to like change the names on the phones. It's so sort of all over the place and up and down and all through whatever, right? So that's just sort of a microcosm of how the entire process works. And that goes from a laneway house to a 2-story addition to a full new house build to a mid-rise to a 40-story tower.
It almost takes the same process and amount of time to do a laneway house as it does to do a high-rise building.
Yeah, I mean, it can be, right? Like, so. But I mean, there's glimmers of hope, right? So I mean, look, I've been working as an architect in Toronto for just over 15 years, and the Laneway House Initiative was the first idea or concept that I saw that at least showed me that the city was sort of listening and understanding that, like, whoa, we need to do something. Oh, okay. Oh, everybody's been waiting for us to do something. Okay, well, let's do something. So they did it. You know, that's besides the fact that I've now got issues with the bylaws that they did right, and they just whipped it together so quickly that there's so many sort of, you know, black holes in that bylaw as is. But I definitely appreciate the gesture of like, let's do something, let's implement it, let's push it forward, and let's be pro-development.
Not only is it an abyss, but it's an abyss with black holes in it. Like, this is not getting better.
So they need more staff. That's what they need.
Staff would be really good. And you know what? The unemployment rate, although, you know, unemployment went down significantly, or up, I guess, depending on how you read those numbers. But the percentage is lower of mainly part-time workers. But there's a lot of people that would probably be able to help with these. There are some pretty mindless tasks involved in planning, so it doesn't really need to be a planner or a license.
It takes that's actually where you're wrong. It's like, why would I feel much better, you know, why doesn't the city, for example, it's like, I know so many small, tiny, even one-man show architecture firms out there where they're sort of slogging along. They're trying to find work, and they're trying to find work, and they're trying to find work. I would so much rather trust my zoning review to a licensed architect who's running a one-man show than to some guy in the city working, doing zoning reviews who didn't go to planning school, didn't go to architecture school. He sort of just came in, he got a job at the city and was sort of trained as to like what to look through in this checklist, but isn't able to sort of think critically and assess each situation. So why are we not, I mean, this is just a one-off idea concept, but like, why are they not sort of outsourcing a lot more of this stuff to local planners, architects, you know, around the city to do stuff like zoning reviews or committee of adjustment reviews, or, you know, why are they not bringing in and having more, I don't know, now with the digital age and now with the virtual committee of adjustment, you know, that's actually another thing that they've implemented because of COVID that was
good or bad?
Unbelievable. First of all, we're getting 2 hearings a week instead of 1 hearing a week. So it's cut down the time in half. So instead of me waiting 5 months for a committee of adjustment hearing, I can now get one in 2.5 months, which is amazing. And the fact that like, I don't have to take off an entire day and go sit there for 5 or 6 hours and wait, you know, until I'm the last one on the list, and then I go present, and that's a cost to my clients. B, it's sort of a pain in the ass for me to sit there all day. Whereas I can just sit here in my office. I'm working away. I've got the committee of adjustment hearing on to the side. When they call my name, I go, I present. It's good to go. I don't have to leave my office. It's you know, so that was, you know, that took COVID. Like, thank God for COVID to sort of implement that, because committee of adjustment has always been the bane of everybody's existence. It's been a total nightmare for the last 15 years that I've been doing it. So, you know, it
opens the doors now for the neighbors, right? Because some of the neighbors don't want to have these like outlandish complaints in public, face to face. But now the crazies get to show up because they're just online at their computer, and they just get to talk all sorts of.
It didn't really stop the crazies before.
I know.
It did in the sense that like before, the most that they would do was just sort of like, maybe they would send in a letter of opposition, but they, you know, for them to show up and complain was like, I wouldn't say rare, but it's like, you know, it's definitely opened up the crazies to now show up, right? So like the last one I just did, for example, was, you know, we had 13 letters of opposition. We destroyed the committee of adjustment. No problem. We got unanimous 4 hands up at committee.
This is on a house?
This is on a house, yeah. So, but just the fact that you're right? It like for them to just switch on the computer and show up.
Third floor? What is this?
It's like it didn't.
What are you proposing there that everybody is so against it?
You know what we're proposing that everybody's so against it? It's at Yonge and Eglinton, which just happens to be, so, you know, you go north of Eglinton on Yonge. I won't say the street name, but whatever. But it's just, you know, and I hate the word NIMBYism, but it's literally what it was, right? I mean, the original design called for nothing. It's a simple 2-story rear addition off the back of a beautiful existing Victorian, 100-year-old Victorian home, right? So, I mean, most of the people didn't even understand the drawings, and they were complaining that we think the design is horrible and it doesn't, and, you know, the whole front facade's horrible and it doesn't meet with the nature of the street and that same old song and dance. And I just sort of go out and explain, you know, we're not tearing the house down, right? You know, we're keeping the entire whole front part of the house. It's a beautiful 100-year-old Victorian facade that we're keeping. So
yeah, but I don't like it. I don't want it here.
So whereas in the past, you know, people, for them to take off work or do whatever and show up at a committee of adjustment hearing, it's hard, right? But now it's like almost every one of them showed up. I mean, but that's why we won unanimously, right? Because they're arguing things that they don't understand, that they're arguing things that have nothing to do with variance, right? Like, you can't argue what it looks like. You can't argue the paint and color and the color of the brick and the blah, 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 right? So, but that being said, we're now being taken to TLAB, right? Because it's just so much more, it's so much of an easier process now. Like, you submit your $300, you go to TLAB, everything's online, everything's virtual, everything's this and that, right? So, you know, like with anything, you know, technology is just always ends up being a double-edged sword. So no matter how push it.
All right. Well, what I'm hearing here, beneath the surface of all this nonsense, is that I think what I'm hearing, I think the main point here is that we need more robots. Stat.
Yeah.
Exosuits.
Russian robots.
We
have to
need
be brought in to
robots
fix the housing crisis.
and drones, and some standardization wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, so basically...
And it's all the government's fault, right? We're all in agreement?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So as your expert, my answer to your question is more robots, less government, and
more robots.
More robots. Yeah.
More robots.
The top 3 answers on the board.
Let's get a little shameless plug here, Ben. What's your website, company name, all that stuff?
Projekt Studio Architects. So we are project with a K. So our website is projekt-s.com. And we're sort of we're a boutique architecture firm. So we're working on everything from single family to mid-rise stuff and some master planning stuff. But then we're also doing, commercial and institutional commercial work. A boutique approach. And that's what we're doing. Go check us out. And hopefully in this next week, we're going to be doing a soft launch for our Laneway House initiative that we think is, it's really for the everyman. Again, I'm finding that a lot of these laneway houses that are actually going through and being built, and a lot of the ones you're seeing on blog TOs and the Globe and Mail and whatever, they're beautiful. They're all these beautiful architectural gems, and they're amazing buildings, and they're amazing one-off, beautiful architectural projects, and they're all coming in at $500,000-$600,000, and they're all for the guy who has an extra $500,000 or $600,000 to drop, and but there's just a much bigger market out there for the person who has no money extra in their pocket, but understands that I could go borrow money for the bank, and if I could get one for $250,000, that's an amazing investment, right? Whether it's for our own personal home office or gym, or for an income property. So that's what we're going to be pushing in the next little bit.
Nice. Yeah, gym and home office. Imagine that. What a luxury laneway suite that would be. You have this little gym outside, do whatever you need, offices on top. You don't even have to leave your property ever again. Drones are dropping off your groceries. That is an amazing lifestyle. Holy smokes.
Robots.
Yeah.
And soon it'll be built by a 3D printer.
There you go.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Mr. Ben, nice meeting you.
Yes. Nice meeting you too. We should form a band sometime or something. You look like you would be a good bass player.
Yeah, that's a good
His hair's
idea.
a little bit shorter now, but that's okay.
I had short hair when we were in the band for parts of it.
I had hair.
And Ben had hair. More hair on his head than on his face back then.
That's right.
I tried to find some old pictures. I don't know where the hell they went.
You should have posted them for on this website.
They're gonna be the thumbnail.
Video after.
They're gonna be the thumbnail. I'll see if I can add them in post. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
I've got some old Shaggy Group Dog pics I'll send you.
Well, that's what I'm looking for. Anyways,
I've got a couple on my Facebook page or something. So.
I know I have them somewhere, but yeah, send them to me. I'll throw them in there. All right, boy.
Well, boys, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Talk to you later.
All right.